You're listening to Customer Growth Sessions, presented by Intergrowth, where we talk through strategies to help up-and-coming e-commerce businesses bring in more customers. I'm your host, Pat Ahern. Let's jump in. Okay, listeners, welcome back to the latest episode of Customer Growth Sessions. Pat Ahern here, recording this session on my own. I want to talk about one of the biggest topics that businesses have been coming to me with concerns about. And that is, in this new AI era that we are now fully immersed in, how do businesses win when it comes to customer acquisition? I've been telling businesses that the solution is as straightforward as one word: positioning. Here's what I mean. In the AI era, it is becoming increasingly easy for any individual to go to their preferred LLM and to type in a hyper-targeted request of what they are specifically looking for. They might list off a dozen different characteristics about their specific business needs, about their specific consumer needs, and ask ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it may be, to pull together a firm recommendation of which business should they go to find that solution. Pre-ChatGPT and other LLMs, that process worked a little bit differently. People would typically either go to social media, they might ask their friends, family members in person, or coworkers in person for recommendations about a specific product. Or more likely, they would go to Google, they would type in a broad phrase, really more so talking about their specific pain points, and then go through a journey of gradually figuring out what their solution is, in part being sold to by the businesses that were investing in A, Google Ads, B, creating content so that they would show up and get to control the conversation with consumers. Much of that process still holds true. However, more and more AI is starting to generate answers to many of these educational queries, and AI is far better at helping you nowadays to really narrowly isolate what you're looking for. In the past, if you went to Google and you typed in that you were looking for a Mexican restaurant in Denver, Colorado that has a good atmosphere for families and maybe has great food added as well, Google's going to provide you with pretty garbage results generally. They're probably going to show a couple businesses that are family friendly. They're going to show a couple businesses that have a great atmosphere, and then a couple businesses that have great food. And there's probably going to be very few businesses in the mix that show up that check all of those boxes. If you go to ChatGPT, you're going to get a very different experience. You're probably going to get 2 or 3 businesses that check just about all those boxes. And yes, some of them might be hallucinated, but the businesses that are clearly defining that they are that family-friendly Mexican restaurant with great atmosphere and great food are going to be the ones that win. Here comes positioning. So with that, differentiation and clearly defining what makes your business unique is becoming more important than ever. So here's what I'd recommend doing. Sit down, pause the podcast, take an hour, and write out a 1 to 2 sentence pitch for your business. That could be specific customers that you work with, specific things that differentiate you from other providers that are out there. It could be specific pain points that you help customers to solve. After you've written that down, I want you to read that pitch out loud and tell me if that same pitch could be used to describe any of your big competitors. If yes, the pitch needs some work. You got to try and refine that a little bit more. So I want to use Intergrowth as a tangible example right here, because we've been going through this exercise a lot, particularly in the past year. Our pitch for Intergrowth is that Intergrowth helps B2C businesses that see their brand as an asset to get more customers through SEO and content marketing. So that's a good starting point, but candidly, there are a lot of other agencies out there that could probably use that pretty much identical descriptor to describe their business as well. So we decided to take it a step further and said, okay, that descriptor will work for a V1, but let's also map out what are the very specific problems that we solve and what are the specific things that differentiate us from other businesses. What I'd actually recommend doing is go through this process first internally by yourself. Take an hour to write down V1 of your answers, characteristics that differentiate you from other businesses, pain points you solve, maybe that other businesses aren't as qualified to solve, you name it. Anything that's really going to differentiate you from everyone else that's out there. Again, I'd say take an hour, write it down now, come back to it a week later and see if you've changed your viewpoint on any of these answers. Once you have a pretty clear sense of what you're going to go with, I'd recommend asking your team these exact same questions. What I found personally really helpful to do is to actually just send out a survey to our team asking a whole bunch of these questions and seeing how they responded to try and get a sense of how much of a correlation is there between my own perspective and the rest of the team's perspective. Now, if you already have this mapped out internally, what I would recommend doing instead is to slightly tweak that process and more so look at it from the communication lens. So rather than sit down and go through that exercise if you've already done so, instead, I'd recommend pull a few team members aside and just ask them on the spot these same questions. If they, one, don't know the answers, then I would say put more time into really communicating these answers internally so that everyone has a clear sense of your positioning. Similarly, whether they know the answers or not, ask them if they have a clear understanding of where they could find these answers in your internal knowledge base, whether that be on like a Google Drive, whether it be in a Notion, you name it. If team members don't know these answers, that's okay. If they don't know where to find these answers, that could be a great opportunity to really improve upon. What I've personally found really effective, our team uses Notion really heavily in our business. We have what we call our team homepage, which is kind of like the starting point for anyone when they log into the Intergrowth Notion account, where they can find access to all sorts of different resources that are going to be helpful for them, whether it be process docs broken down by very specific capabilities that we offer, whether it be information about training material for their specific role, whether it be a breakdown of other members of the team and which roles they offer, or similarly, whether it be more so like admin and positioning type things, elements like your company direction. I find it really helpful to make that easily accessible to the team. I'd recommend that you do the same. Okay, so now that you have your positioning clearly defined internally, the next step I'd recommend working on is clearly communicating that positioning across every single online channel that you can. So what I'd personally recommend doing is start out by asking yourself, one, is this positioning really clearly stated on our website? If not, that should be the number one thing you focus on. When LLMs are trying to get a clear understanding of your business and whether you are that family-friendly Mexican restaurant with great food and a great atmosphere, your website's going to be one of the first points that they're going to look to for it. And if they don't see any of those elements clearly reflected, they are far less likely to recommend you, even though you may, in reality, be the perfect solution that people are looking for. After you've focused on rolling this all out on your website, I would take a look at all the following places and ask yourself the same question. One, I would start by looking at your primary social channels. Think like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. Company email signatures. Do you have a company email signature built out? If so, or even if not, that's a phenomenal place to highlight your positioning. From there, take a look at your Google My Business and other local directories, whether it be things like Yellow Pages, Merchant Circle, Yelp, or whether it be more so like industry specialized directories that are far more important for your type of business than maybe other types of businesses. How clearly have you stated your positioning there? And then from there, I would take a look at any other sort of forums where you're able to create call it a company profile page. A really good way to look at it is if LLMs are scanning the internet and they find 100 different data points that are talking about your business, how consistent are those 100 different randomly generated data points going to be in clearly stating your positioning? So let's talk about how we rolled this out for Intergrowth, just to have a sample point. What we found really effective to do is to start out by internally putting together a competitor comparison. What we decided to do is pull together, for our own internal understanding, a firm breakdown of what separates us from 90% of other SEO agencies out there, based on our own internal understanding and feedback that we've heard directly from clients. We then took that and decided to just feature that really prominently on our homepage. We've rolled that out on a ton of different agency directories, and it's something that we're trying to feature as prominently as possible. It talks about very specific pain points that we solve, often based on things that really frustrated us that led to us actually starting Intergrowth in the first place. And when we look at this breakdown, it talks about things such as most SEO agencies that you work with probably are going to work with you for 12 months before you fire them because you're just going to see them as a vendor that checks the boxes. They're probably going to bury you in a lot of technical jargon that goes over your head. A lot of them maybe aren't going to have very clear deliverables or timelines for when they offer those deliverables, and much more. These are all things that we very deliberately from day one tried to build out differently. We're firm believers in transparency. We built out an entire software application called our Growth Hub to make it really easy for clients to understand at all times what is the status of every single initiative that we're working on for their brand. We hold monthly consultation calls where we walk through reporting metrics and walk through the other things that we did on a monthly basis. We break down all sorts of industry jargon and try and strip that out of the equation whenever we can, unless it's terms that we think the client is comfortable with. At the end of the day, even if we look at client lifespan, our average client has stayed with us for 31 months, call it almost 3 years. The industry average is closer to 12 months. That's a huge point of pride for our business. Now, on top of clearly defining those key differentiators and as many different mediums as possible, we also run customer growth sessions. As we know, it's a podcast entirely focused on helping e-commerce business owners. We've also narrowed our content strategy to focus entirely on content designed for e-commerce businesses, insurance businesses, and other B2C businesses, which is really who we're best suited to help. Which gets into the next point, communicating who you should help and who you shouldn't help. I would say this was probably the toughest part of the equation, and that is sharing publicly your strengths and weaknesses. A lot of brands internally put together a SWOT analysis where they list out strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. They build out customer personas, and they keep it internal. They share it with members of their team when they're writing blog articles, when they're designing meta ads, you name it, but they never share that with the world. The unique opportunity that we have with large language models is if we're comfortable sharing what makes us great and what makes us weak, LLMs become this incredible tool that can siphon way more of the right type of people to our business. And similarly, the wrong type of people are going to be sent to a competitor. Now, in a really ideal world, the way that this ends up working out in the long term is you and your competitors all are very publicly facing about what makes you great, what makes you weak, who are you best suited to help, who are you least suited to help, and you all end up building out this really incredible niche of customers that you're really, really well suited to help and build out these really incredible business opportunities. The reality is, though, people don't do that for the most part, and I understand why. If you look at almost any comparison page that's out there, whether it be in SaaS, whether it be in e-commerce, pick an industry, you'll see the exact same thing. The comparison page is going to be some sort of checkbox. It's going to list out a whole bunch of different features. It's going to break down all sorts of different competitors. It's going to say competitor A has features A, B, and C. Competitor B has B, C, and D, and so on and so forth. None of the competitors are going to have every single box checked, aside from the client who actually designed this features comparison breakdown, and it's going to show that they are undoubtedly the best option to work with. LLMs are really good at sifting through all these different competitor comparison pages and kind of filtering out a bunch of that noise. So if you're not being transparent about what makes you weak, when is a competitor the better option for you, LLMs are probably going to just ignore you and look at third-party review sites instead to get a better source of truth. A really good way of looking at it is that approach is almost like telling people, oh, we're better than all of our competitors in every single way. Just trust us on this one. Without that verification or that acknowledgement of your weakness, that data point kind of gets lost in the void. So let's talk about how Intergrowth rolled this out. So as a sample point, who is Intergrowth best suited to help? We define our ideal customer as 1, B2C businesses, particularly those in e-commerce and insurance. 2, that are generating $2 to $20 million in annual revenue. 3, that see their brand as an asset to their business. And what I mean by that is businesses that are comfortable with AI-generated content, that are willing to take some of those short-term shortcuts that might sacrifice their brand in the long term, or maybe aren't willing to invest in building out a really clear brand voice, aren't going to be thrilled working with us. They're far better off going to a different agency. Now, within that, what we specialize in is helping those businesses to acquire more customers. So We can almost simplify that to we help small to medium-sized businesses selling to consumers who care about their brand to get more customers. Now, within that, we also felt it was really important to clearly define who aren't we suited to help. So we put together a handful of characteristics based on clients we've worked with in the past that, or similarly, just clients that we know we wouldn't work very well with. So one, we're not really well suited to work with $100 million plus annual revenue brands. I'd love to work with them, but that's not our core competency. We work with small to medium-sized brands that have far less red tape that they have to deal with, that are looking for someone that can move quickly and help them with implementation. Who else aren't we suited to help? We're not suited to help brands that are strictly focused on better monetizing their existing customers rather than gaining new customers. Most of those businesses are going to be far better off going with an email marketing agency, of which we have one partner in particular that I'd love to put you in touch with if that describes you. But if we're talking to a business that already has a really well-established email list, they have a happy consumer base who regularly comes back to repurchase from them, sure, SEO might be a good investment for them. But if they're comfortable just riding with that existing customer base, that's great. They can go a different way and they can go with email marketing instead. Other brands that we're not suited to help are going to be brands that are spending less than $5,000 a month on online marketing. We're an expensive option. Part of that means that we're only able to help businesses that have a larger marketing budget to work with. Brands that fall in that space of spending less than $5,000 a month, there's nothing wrong with that, but those brands probably shouldn't be working with an agency quite yet. They're going to be far better off working with freelancers, bringing on interns, and being able to maybe hire a part-time advisor who can help give them strategic direction about where to deploy their marketing dollars and how to take those resources and get as much bang for their buck out of them. Going back to the brand side of things, we're also not going to be well suited to help brands that are comfortable using AI to generate content for their website. It's great if they want to use AI for ideation, if they want to use it to get feedback for their content, but teams that are looking to just create AI-generated blog articles in mass are going to be way happier spending pennies, let's say, to get the AI-generated content than working with us. We're going to charge a lot more per blog article, and I'd say with confidence we're going to generate way better blog articles than they're seeing with AI. But if they're happy with those AI articles, that's great. They can go their separate way and they can see their results from that. Other areas that we're not going to be well suited to help are going to be brands that are looking for a full service agency that can really handle all of their marketing. We can advise on different parts of digital marketing. It's something we do with every client that we work with, but we only handle strategy and implementation for the whole process of acquiring new customers. On top of that, we're not going to be well suited to work with brands that are looking for multilingual agencies. Conversations that have come up a few times where a business, for me, I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden right now. We've had Swedish businesses that have come to us and have been looking for optimization help in Swedish. We've also had German-based businesses who have wanted to work with us. And after talking through it, we realized we're not the right team to work with. You're far better off working with a brand that has native Swedish speakers on it or native German speakers. We can occasionally advise those businesses. We've worked in particular with a handful of Swedish businesses, but all of our editors and writers are native English speakers. We only write and optimize English-based content. So many of those companies are going to be way better off going to an agency that does have that multilingual capability. The last one, and this ties into the $5,000 or less budget, is brands that are looking for the low-priced option. We certainly are not that. We're a premium provider, and we're an expensive provider. So someone who's looking to figure out how can they get as much output as possible for as little cost as possible is probably going to be better off working elsewhere. So obviously, this is just one scenario of me listing out who are the businesses that we're not suited to help. That's far from all-encompassing of showcasing that to the world publicly, but it is something that we regularly try and talk about. I post on LinkedIn very regularly and have written many blog articles about who we are suited to help and similarly who we aren't suited to help. Now, once these elements have been communicated on all of these different online mediums, the last essential stage of positioning in the AI era is to make it really easy for search engines and LLMs to understand your online assets. So in my eyes, this right now has the most overlap of any optimizations. So I'm going to timestamp this. I'm recording this at the very end of August 2025. At the moment, The area of the largest overlap for optimizing for search engines and optimizing for large language models is confirming that bots can find, crawl, and analyze all of your online assets. There's a very strong overlap between doing this for SEO and doing this for LLMs, with a handful of additional things that are going to come into play with LLMs. So one really great starting point, and I'll share a link in the show notes of this. We put together a full article on what we refer to as discoverability, crawlability, and indexability. Give this a read. This is all about doing the things on your website to make sure that search engines and large language models can find, can analyze, and can index the various pages on your website. Some of the jargony terms you're going to see coming up in here in terms of discovery is going to be your sitemap file and then setting up proper in-link structures or internal link structures. On the finding side of things or the crawling side of things, the biggest thing that's going to come into play here is your robot text file, ensuring that LLMs and search engines are allowed to crawl the various pages of your website. And then the third stage is going to be indexation. This is going to primarily deal with meta robots, X robots, and then canonical tags to a smaller degree. Again, check out the article if that's not something that you've put dedicated thought into in the past. This is going to be absolutely essential in the AI era to make sure that all of these bots can properly find, crawl, and index your various web pages. From there, a few things that I'd really recommend doing is one, set up schema markup for your website. This is going to help tremendously for search engines in particular today to allow them to better connect the dots between your website, your social profiles, your individual brand, let's call it. I'd argue for large language models, this is also going to play an extremely large role in the long term of helping them to connect the dots. There are some really strong arguments that LLMs currently ignore certain elements of schema markup. Whether that's the case or not, I'd highly recommend doing this because this is, as I like to put it, this is like training wheels for Google. It makes it really easy for search engines to connect the dots and verify a lot of these things. I would recommend doing this for search engines alone, and I would say that there's a very high likelihood that it benefits your ability to rank in large language models from there. I would say three big things you really want to focus on within the schema markup side of things. One, set up organizational schema. That's going to help connect the dots between your business website, your business entity, and all sorts of other elements related to your business. That might be where you add in your phone number, address, you name it. Same as schema, I think of as like the hidden gem for connecting the dots and helping you to rank your website way higher if you already have a strong social following. So same as schema in particular is really going to focus on making it clear to all these bots that your, let's say, LinkedIn profile, your YouTube profile, your Facebook profile, and more are all associated with your business website. I've seen multiple scenarios where we've consulted for businesses that have rolled out this one change of setting up schema markup and seen their rankings skyrocket within as little as 48 hours. So I'd highly recommend do that right now. The third schema element that I'd recommend is if you have an active blog, ensure that you have proper author schema set up for your blog to really just provide more context about who are the actual people writing content for your website, what is their credibility to speak to your specific subject matter, what are their various social channels. All of this is going to help lend more credibility to your blog articles and help them to rank far higher. Once you've rolled out these elements, this is where what I broadly refer to as technical SEO is really going to come into play. Think of this as the equivalent of doing the engine maintenance on your car. It's the types of things that aren't necessarily as glamorous to do. They're the types of things that you have to get your hands a little bit dirty and maybe you have to pop open the hood to do things on a routine maintenance basis. Some of the biggest technical SEO items that are going to come into play are going to be all related to making it really easy for search engines to analyze your website. And also, I would argue, creating a really great user experience. So I'll share another link in the show notes here as well, where we break down some of the most essential technical SEO items to start with. Specifically, we'll take a look at the Pareto principle of SEO guide that we put together, which breaks down the most essential technical SEO items that you should work with right off the bat. Now, the next one that's taking a little bit of heat in the SEO community over the past couple of weeks is LLM text files. At the exact moment, there's a really strong argument to be made that LLM text files are not widely recognized by large language models. And as a result, there are some people saying it's a complete waste of time. I think that's a foolish take for two reasons. One, LLM text files are almost the equivalent of putting together like a one-sheet overview of what your business does, who you're really well suited to help, what specific product services you offer, client reviews, and much more. So even if there is zero tangible SEO or LLM benefit that comes out of this, think of this as like your one-page business summary. Getting on the same page with your team and putting this together is an extremely helpful exercise that's going to force you to think really critically of how do you explain your various products in just a sentence or maybe two sentences? What is your one-sentence business overview? What is your founding story? All these types of things are so beneficial to have widely accessible for every member of your team. The second thing that comes into play is right now, LLM text files are in their infancy stages. It's a really brilliant concept that was created at this point about 9 months ago. With that, adoption is still next to zero for LLM text files. What I feel very confident assuming will happen is at some point in the near future, we are going to see every major LLM gradually start to adopt LLM text files. And what is most likely going to happen is one LLM is going to announce that they now widely recognize LLM text files, and every single other LLM is going to scramble to start doing the same. When that happens, we're going to see a mad dash of businesses trying to construct their LLM text file, probably doing so haphazardly. And the brands that already took the time to do that now are going to have a huge leg up while their competitors are trying to put this together and are going to see an unfair competitive advantage in the short term. But think of LLM text files as, again, your one-sheet roadmap for LLMs. It's a phenomenal way to provide detailed overviews of what your business does and what makes you unique, and really just provide that additional data point that LLMs can reference. Now, the last thing that I want to emphasize here is that positioning is an ongoing process. You're not going to define your positioning today and have that in place exactly as is 5 years from now. It's far more likely that you're going to build out version 1 of your positioning. You're going to get feedback from your team or from your clients. You're going to refine that to version 2 and then to version 3 and so on and so forth. And each variant of this positioning is going to get you a little bit closer towards your end destination. So treat it as an ongoing process. Treat this as a living, breathing document or a living, breathing exercise that you're constantly revisiting, but don't ignore it. Positioning is going to be the key thing that separates the winners from the losers in this AI era. Thanks for tuning in to Customer Growth Sessions. If you found it helpful, subscribe and give us a review. It helps us to grow the show. Looking for more SEO guidance on how to grow your business? Contact us at intergrowth.com/estimator or email me directly. You can reach me at pat@intergrowth.com. That's all for today. We'll see you again soon.